protect freedom for all. And I will go in and advocate positions that I disagree with. Why? Because I believe that certain individuals should have the freedom to do that. See, I have to tell you, I was thinking about the comment that was made earlier where we stood up and applauded. See, my father was very liberal as they come, college professor. My mom, ultra-conservative, conservative as they come. And here I am growing up around this dinner table, getting my head knocked back and forth. My mom's a lawyer, my dad's a professor. And I tell you what, we had great debates around the dinner table. But the one thing that my dad taught me more than anything else is this: he that doesn't understand his opponent's argument doesn't truly understand his own. You've got to understand where your opponent's coming from, and you have to be able to articulate your opponent's argument better than he can. And he also taught me this, that the ultra-right and the ultra-left, there's no difference. There's no real difference. They both believe in grasping more power to move forward with their agenda. They're both about power. So can we find that middle ground? And I'm not saying be a moderate. I'm saying being a constitutionalist, because the constitutionalist is right there in the middle. The constitutionalist is the one who believes in freedom and says, you know what? I don't want government to take care of all these problems. Because isn't that what we do? Every time a problem is created, we say, government, fix the problem. Those Muslims are coming after us. Government, fix the problem. How about engaging in the marketplace of ideas? Right? Slavery, white supremacy, communism. Let the marketplace of ideas take its course, because what ultimately happens when you let the marketplace of ideas take its course? Almost always the good ideas prevail. Almost always. And what we've said is let government take care of the problem. I disagree with this. I believe in a Republican form of government that hinges on the idea of popular sovereignty, where we take care of the problem. Government's got us into this problem. Why are we relying on them to create more or find solutions when we know that they'll just create more problems? Take the power back. This is for us to correct, not government. And so now here we have, can we go to the next slide? We have government. Here's a great question. We'll get to that in just a minute. We'll get to the great question in just a moment. Here's another one. Let's go here first. We talked about this earlier. I want to reiterate, because now we're starting to get into a little bit more specific things here. Sir, you're running for Congress. Can you tell us where you derive your authority to act as a congressman? We now know it's Article 1. It's Article 1. It's one of the foundational questions that's going to change that discussion. Next question. Article 1, Section 8. Can you tell us how many grants of authority you have as a congressman? Probably won't be able to answer that. You and I know it's 20. Can you tell us, of the 20 grants of authority under Article 1, Section 8, can you name 5 of them? Can you name 3 of them? Can you name 1 of them? Right? Unless we ask these questions, they're not going to have any interest. Wouldn't it be awesome? You get a congressman and say, I can name them. I can name them. But the problem is that 99% of them can't name them. And that's why you have clowns like Harkin getting up and saying, hey, we've given you a constitutional right. He doesn't have any power under the Constitution to do such a thing. Executive orders. This is a great one. Executive orders. Not all executive orders are unconstitutional. Not all executive orders are unconstitutional. The executive orders that are unconstitutional are those that the president signs in order to forego the legislative process, which is probably the majority of them. But what kind of executive orders are constitutional? Those that are written and ordered pursuant to a grant of authority. For example, the president is the commander-in-chief. He wants to move troops from one location to another. Can he issue an executive order to do that? Of course he can. Right? That's his grant of authority as the commander-in-chief. He can do that. No problem doing that. Diplomatic affairs. Issue an executive order as to how he's going to deal with these people and what policies he will have in place. He certainly can do that. So here's your question for that congressman. Sir, do you believe that executive orders are do you believe that executive orders are constitutional? If your answer is no, tell us what you will do using the Constitution as your framework to correct the problem in Washington, D.C. Powerful. It's powerful. Tell us what you will do using the Constitution as your guide to address the problem of executive orders in D.C. Very few people can. I've yet to see somebody who can answer the question. I've yet to see one. The answer is, number one, Congress can enact a law overriding the executive order. Number 2, they can refuse funding. Number 3, they can litigate. But these people are doing nothing. They're being asked about the executive orders, and they're saying, we got a lot of work to do. I'm not sure what we can do about that. They need to do something about it. Do they understand, number 1, what an executive order is? Number 2, whether it's constitutional or not, and what they can do using the Constitution as their framework to address the problem. That's powerful. That's called changing the dynamic of the discussion going on in this country. That's called changing the debates, and that's called being a lone voice in the wilderness or a square peg in a round hole, which you will be when you start asking these. You will be, and this is going to take courage. Next slide. Specified powers. I was hoping to have a little bit more time to get into this, but we're running a little short on time, so let me just hit on these really quickly. Tax and spend. Under Article 1, Section 8, Congress has the power to tax and spend for purposes of promoting the general welfare and for providing for the common defense. Those are the 2 areas, okay? So it's important that when they're talking about raising taxes, that they understand that there are parameters. They can't just tax for any reason that they want. Look at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. Look at that as your framework when asking the question. Next, the Commerce Clause. You're pushing forward with pieces of legislation, or there are things going on in Washington, D.C., many of which are justified under the Commerce Clause. Sir, can you tell us what you understand the parameters of authority to be under the Commerce Clause? And see what we get. Because we know the Commerce Clause is nothing more and nothing less than allowing products, goods, to move across state lines free from state interference. It has nothing to do with minimum wage laws or the number of work hours or creating pension plans. That's not their authority, but they do it all the time under the Commerce Clause. We need to start asking the questions that ensure that our candidates understand the Commerce Clause. Next is establish inferior courts. This is a fantastic question. There are 13 circuit courts in this country, and there are 94 district courts. This is a common question going on right now in Arizona. Sir, you're running for one of the most powerful positions in the country, let alone the world. We've got a problem in the Ninth Circuit. They continue to do whatever they want, and they are continually chastised by the U.S. Supreme Court. Can you tell us what you as a congressman will do to address the issue of the Ninth Circuit? Using the Constitution as your guide. That's powerful. What have you done? You've just said, here's the framework for your answer, the Constitution, and here's the question I want you to answer, inferior courts. Powerful. Because most of them are going to say, I'm not sure what we can do. We just got a problem. No, the answer is Article 1, Section 8 says that Congress has the authority to establish all inferior courts, which is all courts other than the U.S. Supreme Court. So guess what? In the Ninth Circuit, they can fix that problem. They can eliminate it. They can create more. They could create two additional circuits if they wanted. But at least get them talking about it. That's a powerful, powerful question. Now think about that. If you understand the framework of that question, you can ask any question you want out there and put it in the framework of the Constitution. We've got a problem with inferior courts. Tell us what you will do to address the 10th Circuit, the 4th Circuit, using the Constitution as your guide. All you're doing is saying, I want you to understand the Constitution and your grants of authority and ensure that you're utilizing those appropriately. Declaring war, right? It's not as Mitt Romney said, I'm going to confer with the attorneys before taking military action. He may at some point, but the right answer was, first I'm going to go to Congress and I'm going to ask permission to engage in military action because the president doesn't have the power to move forward with military action without permission of Congress. So do our congressmen understand that? Those are questions that we can ask. Next slide. Sir, there are a number of things. Article 1 outlines things that you can do. Can you tell us what Article 1, Section 9 says you can't do? Can you name just one, please? Okay, you can't name one. Would you go ahead and tell us what a bill of attainder is? Because that's specifically prohibited under the Constitution. You cannot engage in that sort of action as a congressman. So please tell us what a bill of attainder is. You can't answer that? Okay. Would you go ahead and tell us what an ex post facto law is? Oh, you don't got that one either. Would you go ahead and tell us what a writ of habeas corpus is? What is this? And tell me what the exceptions for a writ of habeas corpus are. See, this is how you change things. But first, we need to educate ourselves. Article 1, Section 9 outlines some prohibitions. It says no bills of attainder. That says when you're moving pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, your 20 grants of authority, be careful that you don't do this. In fact, don't do it. Don't enact a bill of attainder. A bill of attainder is simply saying, hey, I don't like that guy, let's go ahead and issue a death warrant. Or I don't like that group, let's make it illegal to do that without the benefit of due process. A bill of attainder is simply a trial process. Well, it's punishment without the benefit of trial. It's saying you can't do something, and we're going to deprive you of that thing without giving you the benefit of due process. We're just saying, you're a communist, therefore you can't practice law. Sorry. Oh, you want to argue about it? Sorry, you don't have any due process rights. It's end of story, right? That would be a bill of attainder. Whereas an ex post facto law is not on there. Well, it actually is on there. Ex post facto law is enacting a law to try and punish somebody for doing something when at the time they did it, it was perfectly legal. They should know this. We were talking about IRS and retroactivity when it comes to tax laws. What are these guys doing about it? Here's another great question. Sir, Article 1, Section 1 says that all legislative hearing granted are vested in a Congress, namely House of Representatives and the Senate. They're vested in you. Now, there are 250 bureaucratic agencies that exist, from the Department of Education to the EPA, and the list goes on. Can you tell us whether or not you believe those things are constitutional? And if your answer is no, tell us what you will do using the Constitution as your guide to get rid of those 250 bureaucratic agencies. That's powerful. See, these guys aren't going to be prepared to answer the question, but unless we start creating the framework of that discussion, there's going to be no interest. See, because these 250 bureaucratic agencies are unconstitutional. Because when you vest authority in something or someone, they can in turn turn around and delegate it to somebody else. They have no authority to do this. It's vested in them. And yet they've created all of these agencies that have 3 grants of authority, or they hold 3 different powers: legislative, executive, and judicial.